Okay, so let us start by paying homage to the Buddha before our class. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Our homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, and the fully enlightened one. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our Buddhism in English level 4. Right now we come to the week 17 of our Dhamma class, and today is such a very special sutta that we have to study. Let me share the screen. We're gonna study the Sabbāsava Sutta today from Majjhima Nikāya. Sabbāsava Sutta from Majjhima Nikāya 2. So they use the in English Tipitaka is a Majjhima Nikāya 2nd, and for Khmer version you can read from volume 20. Sabbāsava Sutta. So we have also the Khmer version on the website. You can read it. I already dropped. Yeah, that's a Khmer Tipitaka. And then there is also the English version of Tipitaka. For those who cannot read Khmer, they can read English version as well. This is a English Tipitaka website. Access to insight.org. And here we see Majjhima Nikāya 2, Sabbāsava Sutta, all the fermentations translated from Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. And from here, yeah, I prefer to use the Encyclopedia of Buddhism because it gives full explanation. It gives a full situation of how we can study each of the sutta very clearly. And not only suttas, any knowledge in Buddhism, this website always give a lot of detail. So as you can see, I already shared the link. The Sabbāsava Sutta here, they give several translations based on different authors. You can see here like the translation of the sutta, all the defilements. This is translated by Venerable Sujato and Venerable Thanissaro, all the effluents. And then Venerable Valpula Rahula is from Sri Lanka. Like the book, in the book, What the Buddha Taught, he used the term as getting rid of all cares and troubles. So that's the meaning of the sutta, Sabbāsava Sutta. And then another person translated as discourse on all the cankers. For me, I have quoted several different terms I collected from different sources, and we can see how we can use different terms to refer to this sutta, Sabbāsava. As Sabbāsava is a Pali term, so it's come from two combination of the Sabbā and Āsava. So Sabbā means all, Āsava as translated in here, we have several terms such as canker. This is the most often used one. Canker, fermentation, poison, defilement, care and trouble, effluent, inflow, influx, influence, mental bias, etc. There may be more because different authors, they have different ideas on how to pick up the best word for the actual meaning of this sutta. So in combination, Sabbāsava Sutta is the discourse on all cankers, or getting rid of all cares and troubles. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let us come back to the website. Just read at the beginning a little bit, and then we'll have Melanie read at the first part, and then Sister Christina continue to read to the finish. Because we only study this for today, so we're gonna go as quick as possible. We only have 1.5 hours. Okay, let me just start by reading the first passage, the first paragraph that says Sabbāsava Sutta from Majjhima Nikāya 2. In this discourse, the Buddha outlines 7 methods of dealing with defilements, each of which works in certain cases. This sutta emphasizes the distinction between appropriate attention, yoniso manasikara, and inappropriate attention, ayoniso manasikara. In the first section of this sutta, the Buddha identifies 16 questions that should be avoided because they will only lead to more defilements. These questions are given as an example of inappropriate attention, ayoniso manasikara. The title has been translated into English as all the defilements, or all the effluents, getting rid of all cares and troubles, the discourse on all the cankers, etc. So you can read some more from different sources. Just click on the website and you can read more. Okay, so let us come to the original sutta from the Buddha, and this translation is from the Sutta Central by the Bhikkhu Sujato. Can you, Melanie, can you read the first part, please?
Thank you so much, Master. All the defilements. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta Groves, Anathapandita Monastery. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they reply. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, I will teach you the explanation of the restraint of all defilements. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak. Yes, sir, they reply. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, I said that the ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know or see. For one who knows and sees one, proper attention and improper attention. When you pay improper attention, defilements arise. And once arisen, they grow. When you pay proper attention, defilement don't arise. And those that have already arisen are given up. Some defilements should be given up by seeing, some by restraint, some by using, some by enduring, some by avoiding, some by dispelling, and some by developing. One, defilements given up by seeing. And what are the defilements that should be given up by seeing? Take an uneducated ordinary person who has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They have not seen good persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the good persons. They don't understand to which thing they should pay attention and to which things they should not pay attention. So they pay attention to things they should not and don't pay attention to things they should. And what are the things to which they pay attention but should not? They are the things that when attention is paid to them, give rise to unarising defilements and make arising defilements grow. The defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they pay attention but should not. And what are the things to which they do not pay attention but should? They are the things that when attention is paid to them, do not give rise to unarising defilements and give up arising defilements. The defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they do not pay attention but should. Because of paying attention to what they should not and pay attention to what they should, unarising defilements arise and arising defilements grow. This is how they attend improperly. Did I exist in the past? Did I not exist in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? After being what? What did I become in the past? Will I exist in the future? Will I not exist in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? After being what will I become in the future? Or they are undecided about the present. Thus, am I? Am I not? What am I? Who am I? This sentient being, where did it come from? And where it is go? When they attend improperly in this way, one of the following 6 views arise in them, and it taken as a genuine fact. They view myself exists in an absolute sense. They view myself does not exist in an absolute sense. They view I pursue the self with the self. The view I pursue and is not self with the self. The view I pursue the self with what is not self. Or they have such a view. This self of mine is he who speaks and feels and experiences the result of good and bad deeds in all the different realms. This self is permanent, everlasting, eternal, and imperishable, and will last forever and ever. This is called a misconception, the second of use, the desert of use, the trick of use, the awareness of you, the fetter of you, or uneducated ordinary person who is fettered by views is not freed from rebirth, old age, and death. For sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress, they are not freed from suffering, I say. But take an educated noble disciple who has seen the noble ones and is skilled and trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They have seen good persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of the good person. They understand to which thing they should pay attention and to which things they should not pay attention. So they pay attention to things they should and don't pay attention to things they should not. And what are the things to which they don't pay attention and should not? The other things that when attention is paid to them, give rise to unarisen defilements and make arisen defilements grow. The defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they don't pay attention and should not. And what are the things to which they do not pay attention and should? The other thing that when attention is paid to them, do not give rise to unarisen defilements and give up arisen defilements. The defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. They are the things to which they do not pay attention and should. Because of not paying attention to what they should not and paying attention to what they should, unarisen defilements don't arise, and arisen defilements are given up. They properly attend. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. And as they do so, they give up three fetters: identity view, doubt, and misapprehension of precept and observances. These are called the defilements and should be given up by seeing.
Okay, Nyom, stop here. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a long already.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Christina, you can start from number 2.
Yes, defilements given up by restraint. And what are the defilements that should be given up by restraint? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, lives restraining the faculty of the eye. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without restraining of the eye faculty do not arise when there is such restraint. Reflecting properly, they live restraining the faculty of the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without restraint of the mind faculty do not arise when there is such restraint. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without restraint do not arise when there is such restraint. These are called the defilements that should be given up by restraint. Number 3, defilements given up by using. And what are the defilements that should be given up by using? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, makes use of robes only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind and sun and reptiles, and for covering up the private parts. Reflecting properly, they make use of alms food, not for fun, indulgence, adornment, or decoration, but only to sustain this body, to avoid harm, and to support spiritual practice. In this way, I shall put an end to old discomfort and not give rise to new discomfort, and I will live blamelessly and at ease. Reflecting properly, they make use of lodgings, only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, to shelter from harsh weather and to enjoy retreat. Reflecting properly, they make use of medicines and supplies for the sick, only for the sake of warding off the pains and illness and to promote good health. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without using these things do not arise when they are used. These are called the defilements that should be given up by using. Number 4, defilements given up by enduring. And what are the defilements that should be given up by enduring? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, endures cold, heat, hunger, and thirst. They endure the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles. They endure rude and unwelcome criticism, and they put up with physical pain, sharp, severe, acute, unpleasant, disagreeable, and life-threatening. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without enduring these things do not arise when they are endured. These are called the defilements that should be given up by enduring. Number 5, defilements given up by avoiding. And what are the defilements that should be given up by avoiding? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, avoids a wild elephant, a wild horse, a wild ox, a wild dog, a snake, a stump, thorny ground, a pit, a cliff, a swamp, and a sewer. Reflecting properly, they avoid sitting on inappropriate seats, walking in inappropriate neighborhoods, and mixing with bad friends. Whatever sensible spiritual companions would believe to be a bad setting. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without avoiding these things do not arise when they are avoided. These are called the defilements that should be given up by avoiding. Number 6, defilements given up by dispelling. And what are the defilements that should be given up by dispelling? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, doesn't tolerate a sensual, malicious, or cruel thought that has arisen, but gives it up, gets rid of it, eliminates it, and obliterates it. They don't tolerate any bad, unskilled qualities that have arisen, but give them up, get rid of them, eliminate them, and obliterate them. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without dispelling these things do not arise when they are dispelled. These are called the defilements that should be given up by dispelling. Number 7, defilements given up by developing. And what are the defilements that should be given up by developing? It's when a mendicant, reflecting properly, develops the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity, which rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripen as letting go. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without developing these things do not arise when they are developed. These are called the defilements that should be given up by developing. Now, take a mendicant who, by seeing, has given up the defilements that should be given up by seeing. By restraint, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by restraint. By using, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by using. By enduring, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by enduring. By avoiding, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by avoiding. By dispelling, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by dispelling. By developing, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by developing. They're called a mendicant who lives having restrained all defilements, who has cut off craving, untied the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit has made an end of suffering. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina and Yom Melanie, for your great reading for everyone in the class. And I hope at least you all can catch some of the important ideas in this sutta, as we went a little bit fast because it's also a long sutta. And right now, let me share the screen again. As we go into it, we dive a little bit deeper into this sutta together. Sabbāsava Sutta, again in English, Tipitaka version, Majjhima Nikaya second, and Khmer version, volume 20, Baidak Pia Mapai, Sabbāsava Suttaទី2 ចាប់ពីទំព័រទី20ទៅខាងបាលីហ្នឹង so as I have thought seriously that this sutta is one of the most important suttas to study. That's why I bring it up here for the sake of all of you, because in this sutta contains 7 methods to deal with defilements. So we live everyday life with defilements, ups and downs, and in and out every day. We experience all these kinds of defilements, cankers or poison in our daily life. So it's good that we have mindfulness to aware of all these things, so that we know how to deal, how to put an end to these kinds of defilements in the mind. So let me go deeper again with the terminology. Sabbāsava Sutta, from the Pali term, Sabbā and Āsava. Sabbā means all, and Āsava has been translated by different scholars as canker, fermentation, poison, defilement. In Venerable Rahul Vepola Rahula, in the book What the Buddha Taught, he used the word care and trouble. Okay, effluent, inflow, influx, influence, mental bias, etc. In Khmer version, dânភាសាខ្មែរយើង Sabbāsava Āsava មានន័យថាគ្រឿងត្រាំណាគ្រឿងដីត្រាំ ឬគេហៅថាជាគ្រឿងពឹសគ្រឿងពុលក៏បានដែរមិនប្រើពាក្យថា poison ហ្នឹងណាគ្រឿងពឹសគ្រឿងពុលពីព្រោះវាដីត្រាំក្នុងសន្តានចិត្តរបស់យើងហ្នឹងយូរមកហើយ Okay, so these are like the cares and trouble that make us worry, that make us sad, that make us attached, that make us thirst, feel thirsty about something, to gain something. So it's all because of the hidden canker or fermentation that we have in the mind. Etymology, like we just look at how the words come into being and how they use it. So according to Bhikkhu Bodhi, an American Buddhist writer, the commentaries derive the word from a root su, meaning to flow. To flow whole. Scholars differ as to whether the flow implied by the prefix "r" is inward or outward. Hence, some have rendered as influxes. In the influx, but we hold outflow, right? We go effluence. Ajahn Sucitto in his book Karma and the End of Karma describes Āsava as the underlying biases. that fabricate things, emotions, and sensations and responses, which condition grasping through which samsara operates. Different scholar, so different scholar has given different definition. Okay, again, Bhikkhu Bodhi, a stop passage in the sutta indicates the term's real significance independently of etymology when it describes the Āsava as states that defile, bring renewal of existence, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future births, aging, and death. It's according to the Majjhima Nikāya from the sutta. That defile, bring renewal of existence, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future births and aging and death. Thus, other translators, bypassing the literal meaning, have rendered it cankers, corruptions, or taints. Taints, canker, corruptions. De Silva further explained the word canker suggests something that corrodes or corrupts slowly. These figurative meanings perhaps describe the facets of concept of Āsava, kept long in storage, oozing out, taint, corroding. Vì bom pla nhé, hay vì store tục hàng nông dù hay vì hầu triệp được nông sẵn đàn chết bỏ. Sắp sạp dạy nâng dù hay, bạn chỉ lộc hạng thả Āsava, krương tram, krương pức, krương pull. Right? In Khmer version, we translated like that, like a poison that has been, laid down in the subconscious mind long ago, so it becomes fermented. It's like a fermentation. Okay, so let's see. In the teaching of the Buddha, there are 4 types of canker. There are 4 types of Āsava. Before we know 7 methods of how to get rid of Āsava, we must first know that what are Āsava, what are the different types of cankers that we need to get rid of. So here there are 4 types of canker. The canker of sensuality, Kāmasava. Okay, this is relates to our daily lifestyle, that we tend to be lustful, to be attached with all 5 types of sensual desire through the way we see, the way we hear, the way we smell, the way we taste, and the way we touch, right? So with these 5 doors, we open every day the doors of eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. So due to the contact between the eye and the form, the ear and the sound, the nose and the smell, the tongue and the taste, and the body and the tangible objects, it produces sensuality. It produces attachment that we always cling on to, and we don't want to let go. We always want to experience something good, something pleasant. But when something unwanted also coming, then we feel unpleasant, we feel agitated and angry and whatsoever. So this is how canker or attachment arises based on the sensuality, Kāmasava. And the second one, the canker of becoming, Bhavasava, which means clinging to rebirth, right? Clinging to existence. This is because we have the wrong view. Similarly with the third one, that's why we think like something is permanent, something is enjoyable, so we cling to its existence, that we don't want to let it go, we don't want it to perish away, so we hold on to the idea that something existing forever, it lasts forever. So that's why we want to have that again and again. So this is the clingings of becoming in relation to the things we want, and also with relation to our very existence, that we want to be born again and again. And as we have already learned that to be reborn means to experience the cycle of suffering again and again, endlessly. The third one Āsava, the canker of wrong view. And this is also very, very dangerous poison, right? When we have wrong view, because with wrong view, it can bring us down to the woeful about, to the suffering world, endlessly, countless existences that we have to go through, a lot of problems, a lot of suffering because of having a wrong view will lead to be reborn in unhappy worlds. And that's how the wrong view can, condition us. So we better avoid it. The last one, the canker of ignorance, avijjāsava. Yeah, this is something that we always scare of, and that's why we need to develop panya, wisdom. We work hard, we study, we practice in order to gain wisdom as to liberate ourselves from avijja, right, from ignorance. So we see that the cankers, out of these 4 ties, we deal with them every day in our lifestyle. We always have attachment towards the sensual pleasures through our 5 sense doors. It brings in and out all kinds of data and information from this world. So it shakes the mind. The mind gets attached to and cling on to so many things, both pleasant and unpleasant, that are unwholesome roots of the mind. When we tend to attach, or we tend to feel unpleasant about something. So these all are cankers, right? In everyday life, we experience all of them: the wrong view, the ignorance. So now we understand the 4 types of cankers. Then, okay, we want a liberation. When we know that cankers leads to suffering, leads to unhappy state, so we have to find a way to liberate ourselves from these poisons. How are we to get rid of them? Then we continue to read. According to Mr. Rai Davids, freedom from the Āsava constitutes arahantship, which means Āsava can be completely eliminated with the level of enlightenment, such as arahantship, which means the last stage of enlightenment. When you become an enlightened, fully enlightened one, only then that Āsava will be completely removed, right? If you attain the other 3 stages, like the Sota, Sagada, or Anagami, that only suppress it down, not completely eradicated. According to Bhikkhu Bodhi, when the disciple's mind is liberated from the taints by the completion of the path of arahantship, he reviews his newly won freedom and roars his lion's roar. Birth is destroyed. The spiritual life has been lived and had to be done. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming back to any state of being. So this is the expression of the arahant, right? Of the fully enlightened person. When a person attains to this stage of enlightenment, then he doesn't boast himself. He or she doesn't say, "Oh, I am now an arahant." But normally they express this, these phrases: birth is destroyed, the spiritual life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming back to any state of being. So this is the normal expression of arahant, right? Arahant ones. Only then we know that they are the fully enlightened person. Textual appearance, so just some more idea about the Āsava based on different orders. Savepali Rakhakrishnan, in his translation of the Dhammapada, notes that the word Āsava appears in the Dhammapada in verses 93, 226, 253, 272, 292, and 293. Verse 226, chapter 7, verse 6 has been translated by the Acharya Buddharakkhita as follows. Those who are ever vigilant, who discipline themselves day and night, and are ever intent upon Nibbana, their defilements fade away. So these are some of the important verses that relates with the term Āsava, right? It only happens, this cessation of defilement only happen to those who are vigilant, which means to those who are mindful and watchful and discipline themselves day and night, not for those who are lazy and not practicing anything, right? Okay, now let's go on with the methods. This is something that we would like to study, and I would like all of you to keep in mind these 7 methods of removing cankers. This is very special method that ever taught by the Buddha in the teachings of Buddhism. We may not find it in the teachings of any, other teachers or faiths or belief, So I found this sutta very important, especially in terms of the 7 methods that the Buddha deliver here. So we can take any of the method to deal with our, defilements that arises, because some of the defilement, they can be given up or dealt with by just seeing, and some by restraining, some by using, and some defilement can be, destroyed by enduring, avoiding, dispelling, or developing, as you have already listened to the reading of the sutta. So in Khmer version, I also included here, some defilements should be given up by seeing, dasana, right? It says Āsava dasana pahatapia, pahatapa. Chẳng kể lẽ khác, Āsava ឬក៏ថ្នាំពុលនៅក្នុងសន្តានចិត្តរបស់យើងហ្នឹងអាចលះបង់បានដោយការឃើញណាទស្សនាបហាតាពា Āsava sangvara pahatapa, Āsava ណា បដិសេវនា pahatapa, Āsava athivāsana pahatapa, Āsava brivacana pahatapa, Āsava vinodana pahatapa, and Āsava bhavana pahatapa. ចឹងយើងឃើញថាការលះបង់អាសវៈហ្នឹងដោយវិធីសាស្ត្រទាំង 7 យ៉ាងនេះ So these are the 7 ways of removing the cankers. But how are we to do that? By seeing, we can give up some of the defilements, but how are we to see? What are we to see that can lead to the non-arising of cankers and defilement? What are we to restrain? Right? So we have all in the detail of the sutta. You can just come back, read again and again the detail, So here I just make a summary so that we have in mind the 7 methods, and then okay, I just make it in short. I spend the whole day just doing this PowerPoint slide for the sake of your understanding, because when you read the whole sutta, it's kind of long, so you should be able to make it short, make a summary by yourself. I mean, you can do it maybe better than what I do. So this is just what I have come up with the summary. First, how are we to give up the canker by seeing, right? Āsava dasana pahatapa. So in here, I have sum up with 2 points that based on yoniso manasikara and yoniso manasikara. This is very important factors that leads to either arising or non-arising of the cankers. If you have yoniso manasikara, which means improper or unwise attention to the everything in our daily life, and then it will arouse defilements, it will arouse canker that consequently give rise to suffering, right? Unhappy state. So for those, the uneducated ordinary person, which means patujana, uneducated ordinary person here doesn't mean that those who doesn't know language, those who doesn't speak or write, but those who have not well trained in the teaching of the Noble One, in the teaching of the Buddha or in the teaching of the discipline. That is called an educated ordinary person. So for uneducated ordinary person, they always have improper or unwise attention. They don't reflect things properly. That is why it gives rise to 16 kinds of wrong views. It gives rise to 6 kinds of wrong views, and it arouses cankers, defilement. It gives rise to defilement. So that is why it is important that we need to see things or reflect things properly, right? It is yoniso manasikara, proper or wise attention. For those who reflect properly over things on a daily basis, they are called the educated noble person, Ariya Pukkala, right? Ariya Bukkul Sawa. For those who are educated, they will have wise reflection in terms of the Four Noble Truths as well. They reflect the things based on the Four Noble Truths. They see the realities the way they are. They see that this is suffering, this is the cause that leads to suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And that's why their wise attention will lead to the non-arising of the cankers, which means the canker that does not arise will not arise, right? The canker that has not arisen will have no chance of arising. So this is a very important message from the Buddha concerning how we can give up our defilement using this method, right? Seeing method. So even the way we see, it can give rise to attachment, or it will not give rise to attachment by just paying wise attention or unwise attention. Now we already understood that what are the wise attention, right? Something that we shouldn't pay attention to, so we should not. But something that we should pay attention to, we should, right? Just like we know how to choose what to believe and what not to, and what to eat and what not to eat, right? This is in terms of how we make choice in our daily life, you know. So that's why we see these two words, two terms are very important, yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara. When you have ayoniso, which means it is based on avijja, ignorance. When your mind is reflecting things wisely, that means you're using your wisdom. So normally when wisdom takes place, then you do things correctly, right? And then your seeing will bring good result with the wisdom. So in short, using this method of seeing things the way they are, and using wise attention to reflect upon, you know, anything in our daily life, that is basically the method how we can give up our cankers, our āsava. Okay, this is the method 1. And then I would like to further explain what are the 6 kinds of wrong view that normally an educated person always wonder, always think, you know, something that shouldn't be thought, you know, something that shouldn't think, but they think. So there has such an incident in the time of the Buddha. That is why they have this wrong views coming up in the sutta, because in the time of the Buddha, there are some people who always wonder and think about, you know, these things, these ideas. So in the Sabbāsava Sutta, the Buddha identifies 16 questions that should be avoided, which means these are unanswered questions. The Buddha will not answer such a question, right? So the question divided into 3 periods of the time: the past, the future, and the present. We have here in the past 5 questions. Did I exist in the past? Did I not exist in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? After being what did I become in the past? Then questions about the future. There are 5. Will I exist in the future? Will I not exist in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? After being what will I become in the future? And then the last 6 in the present. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? This sentient being, where did it come from? And where will it go? So this question, such questions are not answered by the Buddha, okay? And the other 6, after presenting this list of questions in the sutta, the Buddha states, when they attend improperly in this way, which means yoniso manasikara, one of the following 6 views arises in them and is taken as a genuine fact, but they are wrong view indeed. 1, the view that myself exists in an absolute sense. Myself does not exist in absolute sense. I perceive the self with the self. I perceive what is not self with the self. I perceive the self with what is not self. Or they have such a view, this self of mine is he who speaks and feels and experiences the results of good and bad deeds in all the different realms. This self is permanent, everlasting, eternal, imperishable, and will forever last, right? This is called a misconception, a ticket of use, the desert of use, a trick of use, the evasiveness of use, the fetters of you. An uneducated ordinary person who is fettered by the view is not free from rebirth, old age, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They are not free from suffering, I say. So we should not wonder or ponder over such not necessary questions, because it is they are wrong views that leads one to get lost in one's idea and thinking. So we should avoid from all kinds of such question and belief about self or not self, something like that. Because when we study the teachings of the Buddha, what is really important is the ultimate realities, not the conventional truth, right? The conventional truth is just we assume things for the sake of better communication, but not for the sake of understanding ultimate sense. So let's move further. Number 2, the second method of giving up cankers. But can you mute yourself? Number 2, the second method, by restraining. Okay. So how are we to give up canker? By restraining sangvara, Āsava, sangvara, pahatapa. លះបង់នៅអាសវៈដោយការសង្រួម restraining ចឹងសង្រួមនៅឥន្ទ្រីទាំង6 so we are going to restrain what we got the 6 sense basis. We have to restrain in 6 faculties, right? 6 types of faculty. They have eye faculty, ear faculty, right? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Why we call it as a faculty? Why we call it as a sense basis? Because it sends something, right? When the eye sees the form, eye consciousness arises. So eyes consciousness means seeing arises, right? Seeing means the combination between the eye base that touches the form, which means the form come into contact through the eye doors, and then seeing arises. And when seeing arises, we bring some data, right? We bring some information, and then we name it. We name it as this person or that person, and then we evaluate it, and then it comes up with the sense that, oh, this is good or this is bad. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. And that's how cankers or defilement arises, based on your perception, based on how you view, the form, right? If the form is pleasant, then you get attached. Then lopa, greed, attachment, thirst arises, right? And when you view things as something unpleasant, the form is unpleasant, the form is my enemy, this person is the person I don't like, and then, anger arises. That's how the defilement come into place when we don't know how to guard our senses, when we don't know how to restrain our eye door, our eye faculty, ear faculty. In the same way, yeah, with the ear, we have to restrain while receiving the sound, and then with the nose when receiving the smell, with the tongue when receiving the taste, and with the body that receive the tangible object as something touches, either coldness or heatness, either soft or hard. It can all lead to the arising of attachment. And with the mind, the objects, right, whatever that comes to the mind, we always think. So the method here, we have to apply proper attention, yoniso manasikara, using wisdom, right, in order to guard against or restrain the six senses, the way we see, the way we hear things, and the way we smell, the way we taste, the way we touch, and the way we think on a daily basis is very, very important when we able to be mindful each and every moment, in concern with the six sense basis, because these things are with us all the time, right? This thing we bring everywhere all the time. When you're at home and when you go out, you all have the six sense faculty. So they becomes the object of meditation as well. You don't need to wonder, how can I meditate? Where do I go to meditate? And what should I use for meditation? And what kinds of object that can be taken as a meditation object for reflecting, for meditating? In fact, it's very simple. We have all the weapons, we have all the materials, right? But sometimes we don't know how to use it. So here in the teachings of the Buddha, he taught us, we can use all types of weapons that we have with ourselves to awaken ourselves, to give us, to bring about liberation by just using what we have, like the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. What we really need to add is just a method of wise attention, right? We still see things the way we usually see, but we have to use one more. We have to add more wise attention, right? Which means wisdom in terms of how we see the form, right? In terms of how we hear the sound, etc. That is what he means by restraining. Okay, this is the second method. Now let's come to the third method. Padisevana pahatapa, Āsava padisevana pahatapa. Những đời ca sạp lẹ nữ Āsava, đời ca sạp. How are we to give up Āsava? By this method of making use of the four requisite chatu pachaya, chatu pachai, chẳng bị khẩu sẵn chạy hãy từ pachave kana vithi nắng tăng bị dạ tha pachayang rồi hô đo từ tây tạ pachave kana na pichana na pachai buồn đặc luôn pra năng. So we just using wise attention in relation with the four requisite, because this four requisite not only for the monks but for everybody, for all the living creatures in this world. I mean, mostly human. We have to depend on this four requisite. That is why it is called four requisite. It is compulsory. It is necessary. You cannot live without these four necessities, right? But the other things, something else, they just like supplementary. They just like secondary. They're not primary necessity like this four, right? So to live in this world, to live in this modern world nowadays, we need robes, which means the clothing things, you have to wear the clothes, you have to wear the robe, especially in this context. It refers to the bhikkhus. When the monk teach the way how to make use of the four requisites, the monk taught to the Buddha, the Buddha taught to the monks, because the monks resist everything, not by making money or earning the business, but they receive from the lay donors that donates the robes, that donates the alms food, the lodgings, and the medicine, the medical treatment. So the monks were given by, completely by the lay donors in the times of the Buddha. Even nowadays, the monks' lives depend solely on the lay donors. We don't make business, we don't earn money by ourselves. So that's why the Buddha said you have to make use of the 4 requisites given by the lay donors wisely, right? Using it wisely and mindfully, not to waste anything and not to arouse attachment in using those things, right? That's why he taught this method. We can give up the defilements by this method of using. So first, using robes. We have to reflect wisely that using robe only to cover up the private parts of the body, to ward off cold, which means to protection of, for the sake of protection, of cold and heat, mosquitoes, flies, reptiles, snakes, or whatever that can harm us. So this robe, this clothes, you can also reflect in the same way for the lay people, not just the monk, okay? You're using your clothes simply, basically just to cover up the private parts of the body and to protect from cold and heat, mosquito bite, and so on, but not for anything else. If you take this idea for your daily reflection, then you're not going to kind of picky on clothes or, kind of spend much of the money, waste money on buying clothes from supermarket, or very fashion, very modern clothes, something like that. So that's why the monk, you see, I feel very interested when we talk about the monk's robes, because it's been only one style for over 2,500 years ago. The monk has not changed their style of robes, so it's not up to date. It's not like a fashionable, like a lay people's clothes, right? So we see that how much we have cut down the waste of the the using of clothing, right, for the monks, in terms of wasting money, on in terms of wasting the clothes that gives bad consequence to environment. The more they produce, the more they give bad, the more they give pollution to the environment as well. So we should think about this point. And then alms food, using alms food given by the lay donors. So we should only think that we eat only to sustain this life faculty, right? To sustain our body, to avoid harm, and to support our spiritual practice, to have, energy in order to practice, but not for fun, not for indulgence, adornment, or decoration, right? This is how we reflect upon when making use of the food. នៅក្នុងបដិសង្ខារយោនិសោបណ្ឌបាតតាំងប្រសង្ឃចេះណាហ្នឹងហើយយើងប្រើប្រាស់នៅចង្ហាន់បណ្ឌបាតនេះមិនមែនដើម្បីសប្បាយមិនមែនដើម្បីបង្កើននៅកិលេសដើម្បីធ្វើឲ្យកើតនៅអីបរិស័កមាននេះដើម្បីតុបតែងសត្វស្អាងរាងកាយដោយស្ត្រីក្នុងបរិយទេថ្មអញបរិភោគប្រើប្រាស់នៅចង្ហាន់បណ្ឌបាតនេះគ្រាន់តែដើម្បីញ៉ាំងជីវតិន្ទ្រីនេះឲ្យប្រព្រឹត្តទៅអញ្ចឹងទៅដើម្បីការពារនៅទុក្ខវេទនា ហើយចឹងទៅណាឲ្យឆ្អែតហួសប្រមាណវេទនាថ្មីមិនឲ្យកើតមានបានហើយដើម្បីប្រព្រឹត្តនៅព្រមចរិយធម៌នឹងឯងគឺជារបៀបដែលយើងត្រូវពិចារណាដើម្បីទប់ស្កាត់ដើម្បីលះបង់នៅអាសវៈកិលេសឲ្យអស់ក្នុងសង្ខារសន្តានតែយើងបរិភោគអាហារយើងភ្លេចពិចារណាកិលេសកើតដែរណាយើងទៅបរិភោគដើម្បីរូបស្អាតរាងស្អាតសាច់ស្អាតទៅវិញណាអញ្ចឹងវាទៅជាកើតកិលេស You're not mean wise attention yonisao manasikara is very important, right? We're not eating to make our body beautiful or in shape or something. I mean, this is just a normal concept of people in daily life. Something like that is very simple. They think it's normal, but in the teachings of the noble ones, we should not think that eating for shape or eating for beauty, because that thinking will lead to attachment, right? Give rise to attachment. And as we know, attachment or canker is the root of suffering. So we should reflect wisely that eating only to sustain this physical body and to bring energy for our practice. The third one, making use of the lodgings, accommodation, right? Senasana, only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, reptiles, to shelter from harsh weather and to enjoy the retreat, right? This is how we should reflect upon using our accommodation. Ngày cùng rô tè từ nợ tè thông vì lại nè, từ sang Việt Nam nơi từ trong đám chơi vâng. So the monks in the past mostly lives under the tree, in the jungle, in open areas, in the abandoned houses, because in the time of the Buddha, there were not much development in terms of materiality. No, like nowadays we have a very luxurious monastery, very big temple with big buildings. But if we reflect upon this wisely, we should not, feel attached to that, to such a thing, to such a lodgings. We should stay, as simple as possible, stay humble as much as possible. That way, it will, guard the horizon of the canker. The last one, in terms of medicine, making use of medicine only for the sake of warding up the pains of illness and to promote good health. Okay, this is what the Buddha meant by using. Okay, now comes to the fourth method, enduring. Āsava Athivasana Pahatava. Leh băng nữ Āsava kỳ leh nắng đói cá ắt thuần Athivasana khăn tấy nè đại lữ Athivasana, which means enduring. So enduring what? With these 4 points, okay? Enduring based on the 4 requisites. Enduring what? Like when we use the robe, why we need to use the clothing, the robe? Why we need to make use of the food, the lodgings, and the accommodation? Simply because to protect ourselves from, physical harm or from anything that can bite, that can hurt us. So we just simply reflect how to endure based on the 4 requisites, right? Only for protection of the body, accommodating, sustaining life faculty, and healing the illness. So we simply endure the coldness, the heatness of the weather. We endure, in terms of the physical hardship, right? Overall idea, yeah. And then the number 2, the physical and mental and difficulties, right? We have to endure with the physical and mental pain. As such, if we do not endure it, then it will give rise to attachment. For example, if you're not there to endure the pain during the meditation sitting, you can be painful throughout your body, sitting posture, your leg got numb and painful, and any part of the body is unease. So we have to endure all kinds of physical and mental difficulties, so that it will reduce the arising of the cankers and unwholesome state of the mind. And then we have to endure the unwelcome criticism.ត្រូវរៀនអត់ធន់ទាំងអស់ទាំងរឿងផ្លូវកាយទាំងរឿងផ្លូវចិត្តទាំងរឿងពាក្យនិន្ទារបស់អ្នកដទៃហ្នឹងក៏យើងត្រូវរៀនអត់ធន់ right? We have to endure even the criticism that we don't want. And the last one, all types of unpleasant feeling and life threatening, even life threatening. So បីតការគំរាមដល់អាយុជីវិតក៏យើងត្រូវតែរៀនអត់ធន់ជាមួយនឹងទុក្ខវេទនាជាមួយនឹងឧបសគ្គដែលយើងជួបដូច្នេះយើងអាចកម្ចាត់បងនៅអាសវៈកិលេសបានហើយបើយើងលែងខ្លាចស្លាប់បើយើងមិនលែងខ្លាចលំបាកហើយវាគ្មានឧបសគ្គអីណាមួយដែលថាយើងមិនអាចឆ្លងផុតទេ right? So these all are the great methods delivered by the enlightened one. Number 5, by avoiding Āsava Parivajana Pahatapa. Okay, so this is just a Pali language, right? Parivajana, avoiding. How are we to give up defilement by avoiding? So here's like a comparison. The monk avoids the fish animals, right? Maybe a little bit small, I think so. But I will drop this PowerPoint slide later in our Telegram, okay? So we have to avoid the fierce animal like a wild elephant, a wild horse, a wild ox, a wild dog, a snake, a stump, thorny run, a pit, a cliff, a swamp, and a sewer. And then avoid sitting on inappropriate seats. Nah, avoid sitting on appropriate seat. Đôi khi không ở cha sẽ dần này nè. Thì cái line khu của man để nó mới cả tầm rê cái line kre tầm nơ pe nhưng avoid tới đầm bay việc top scat nơi cái left của mấy cái nè. Avoid walking in appropriate neighborhoods. Nắng hai echo charat than nè. So we have to avoid some neighborhood that shouldn't go. The Buddha mentioned that 4 or 5 times, like for example, going to the marketplace, such a place that should give rise to attachment, and then like going to the brothel, you know, the bon, the bar, right, to the club, something like that, and the line stray. And then avoiding with mixing with bad friends. Whatever sensible spiritual companions would believe to be a bad setting, so we should avoid bad friends as well. So because bad friends can, you know, lead us to do bad things that give rise to attachment, give rise to all kinds of impurities, so we should avoid them. So this is the way in which we can use this method to give up the defilements. Number 6, Āsava Vinodana Vahātapa, right? By dispelling, by destroying, dispelling, leh bang or dispelling, bento bang đôi lìa mũi chứ, bento bang cháo là đôi mình là lại gì. So we can give up the Āsava by using this method of dispelling. Dispelling what? 3 kinds of unwholesome thoughts. Nó trong Samma Sankappa nó để chia Miccha Sankappa. So we have to avoid, or sorry, not avoid, we have to dispel the 3 kinds of unwholesome thoughts: the Kama Vitakka, the thought of lust or sensual pleasure; Vyapada Vitakka, the thought of ill will; and Vihingsa Vitakka, the thought of violence. Okay, so these are the 3 unwholesome thoughts that should be dispelled. And in opposite, we should develop these 3 kinds of wholesome thoughts, which is 1, the thought of renunciation, right? In opposite of sensual pleasure, we need to renounce ourselves from, you know, worldly attachment, worldly sensual pleasures. So the thought of renunciation, nekama sankappa. Then the thought of loving kindness, right? Này cứ apshiapa tệ nó là với tới chỉ metta bên vichra pi chia bát tới chỉ metta. And the thought of benevolence, avihangsa, right? The thought of compassion. So these are the things we should develop. In that way, we use this method to dispel some kinds of defilement that should be dispelled through this method. Okay, this is the 6th method. The last one, 7, through developing Āsava Bhavana Pahatapa. So we give up defilements or Āsava through developing. What are we to develop? Then the Buddha taught there are 7 factors of awakening or enlightenment to be developed. When one follows and practice these 7 factors, it will lead to awakening. It will lead to full enlightenment like the Buddha, right? So the first one, the factors of mindfulness, right? As enlightenment factors of mindfulness, sati, investigation of principles or Dhamma, and Dhamma Vijaya Sampochanka, Sati Sampochanka, investigation of Dhamma, Dhamma Vijaya Sampochanka, and energy Viriya Sampochanka, rapture Piti Sampochanka, tranquility Pasati Sampochanka, concentration Samadhi Sampochanka, and equanimity Upekha Sampochanka, which rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripen as letting go. Okay, these are the 7 factors of enlightenment. You can read in detail. We have a lot in the sutta, and also this one. You can download it from the website too. The diagram here, maybe it's hard for you to read because it's very small. Just keep it here so you can read it later as well. The Buddha expounded 7 factors of awakening from Majjhima Nikaya 118, Anapanasati Sutta, from Anapanasati Sutta, and also from the Sangyutta Nikaya 46, right? Pochanka Sangyutta. We have the Sati, mindfulness. Okay, let me read this one. It's better to zoom it in. Sati, just for example, okay, I'm not going into detail because we run out of time right now. So Sati Sampochanka, mindfulness. On whatever occasion, the monk remains focused on the body, right? Feeling, mind, and mind objects. The body, feeling, mind, and mind objects in and of itself, ardent, alert, mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. On that occasion, his mindfulness is steady without lapse. When his mindfulness is steady without lapse, then mindfulness as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. He develops it, and for him, it goes to the culmination of its development. This is how one should develop Sati Sampochanka, mindfulness as an enlightenment factor. And then number 2, Dhamma Vijaya Sampochanka. Remaining mindful in this way, he examines, analyzes, and comes to a comprehension of that quality with discernment. When he remains mindful in this way, examining, analyzing, and coming to a comprehension of that quality with discernment, then analysis of qualities as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. He develops in it, and for him, it goes to the culmination of its development. Viriya Sampochanka, effort. In one who examines, analyzes, and comes to a comprehension of that quality with discernment, persistence is aroused unflaggingly. When persistence is aroused unflaggingly, in one who examines, analyzes, and comes to a comprehension of that quality with discernment, then persistence as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. Persistence có mean like virya, persistence, energy, effort, endeavor. So many terms. And then piti, a rapture or joy. In one whose persistence is aroused, a rapture not of the flesh arises. When a rapture not of the flesh arises in one whose persistence is aroused, and then not of the flesh, then when I amisa mention nói dần miền Niramisa somto not out Niramisa hay năng amisa sok hay năng Niramisa sok na để pracha noi pracha amisa not of the flesh. Then rapture as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. He develops it, and for him it goes to the culminations of development. The same with pasati, tranquility, for one who enrapture a heart, a body grows calm and the mind grows calm. When the body and the mind for monk enraptured, at heart grow calm, then serenity as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. Serenity and tranquility này được kia pasati thì cái này ngọc. And another one, samadhi, concentration as a factor for awakening. One who is at ease, his body calm, the mind becomes concentrated. When the mind of one who is at ease, his body calmed, becomes concentrated, then concentration as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. he develops it, and for him it goes to the culmination of its development. The last one, upekha, sampochanga, equanimity. He carefully watches the mind, thus concentrated with equanimity. When he carefully watches the mind, thus concentrated with equanimity, equanimity as a factor for awakening becomes aroused. He develops it, and for him, it goes to the culmination of development, right? And the Buddha said, what? In this, bhikkhus, I will teach you the path, crushing the army of Mara. Listen to that. And what, bhikkhus, is the path crushing the army of Mara? It is the 7 factors of the enlightenment. Năng cứ cầm chặt bằng nơi tọp này mía nè, còn tọp bằng xe na mía nè, cứ đòi cả bạn để bạn đã sampo chẳng kẹ bằng pi nè. Bhikkhu, just as all the rafters of a picked house slant, slope, and incline towards the roof peak, so too, when a bhikkhu develops and cultivates the 7 factors of enlightenment, he slants, slopes, and inclines toward Nibbana. Okay, we can read more later on. So I come to the last session based on the time. Okay, just bear with me for a few more minutes. Now we come to the summary. Okay, let us summarize the whole sutta of Sabbāsava Sutta. So the most important things in this sutta is about the 7 ways to deal with our defilement. Okay, let's say not our defilement, to deal with the defilement that experience throughout our daily lifestyle, right? So these are the 7 factors. I make it short, easy to remember, right? If we can practice according to these 7 methods, then we are free from Āsava. Now take a mendicant who, by seeing, has given up the defilements that should be given up by seeing. By restraint, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by restraint. By using, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by using. By dispelling, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by dispelling. By avoiding, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by avoiding. By enduring, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by enduring. And the last one, the 7th one, by developing, they have given up the defilements that should be given up by the developing. So these are the 7 methods to give up, to get rid of our cankers, to get rid of cares and troubles from this world. If we, after so doing, they are called a mendicant. Mendicant means monk, okay, as a recluse, like a recluse, a bhikkhu. They are called a mendicant who lives having restrained all defilements, who has cut off craving, untied the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit has made an end of suffering. មានន័យថាបើភិក្ខុបានបដិបត្តិតាមផ្លូវតាមវិធីទាំង7យ៉ាងនេះហើយចាត់ទុកថាភិក្ខុនឹងបានរស់នៅដោយការសង្រួមណាដោយការការពាររារាំងនៅកិលេសធម៌ទាំងឡាយហើយបានកាត់ផ្ដាច់នៅកិលេសនៅតណ្ហា anti the fetter គេហៅថាស្រាយនៅគ្រឿងចាក់ស្រេះគឺសង្យោចនៈគ្រឿងចងរូបរិទ្ធណា fetter and by rightly comprehending មានន័យថាមានយោនិសោមនសិការៈណា rightly comprehending conceit មានថាមានអ្នកអស្មិមានអ្នក has made an end of suffering បានធ្វើនៅទីបំផុតទុក្ខនឹងគឺជាសេចក្តីសង្ខេប so I would like to make just a quick review with these 7 methods. By seeing, we have to as a follower of the Buddha, we have to practice the Dhamma. Even by seeing the Buddha or some Mahasava, Mahasavaka, those great disciples of the Buddha, we also feel pleasant, we also feel delighted, so it will give rise to a lot of good deeds, wholesome actions. But instead, if we, by seeing those who are not educated, those who are not well trained in the good deed, like ordinary whirlings, so it will not, lead to the state of wholesome. That's why by seeing, it means seeing the good people who have well practiced in the good conduct, seeing the noble persons, seeing the teachings of the noble person, like the Four Noble Truths, wisely reflecting upon his teaching. And then through this seeing, the way we see, it will, lead to the wholesome state of the mind. It will give good consequences, good karma and good vipaka, right? By seeing. So seeing here again, it also refers to the stage of Sota Patimaka. When we see based on the ultimate realities, based on the Four Noble Truths, and then we can give up some of the defilements that are like wrong view, like Silapata Paramasa, Vichikicha or Sakaya Tithi, right? We can give up some of the defilements, like the wrong views about self, the defilements of doubt, the defilements of rites and ritual. So those attachments can be given up by seeing. So the seeing here refers to the Sota Patimaka. So we need to develop it, right? From daily life, day and night, we have to practice that, using our wise attention, yoniso manasikara, to reflect upon everything in our daily basis. And then through restraining, we have to restrain in relation with our six sense doors, six sense basis, the way we see, the way we hear, the way we smell, the way we touch, the way we taste, the way we think, right? Through the six sense doors. And then we have to use another method by using, right, Padisevana side, in terms of using the four requisites, the robes, the alms, food, lodging, and medicines, right? And then in terms of dispelling, giving up the defilement Āsava by dispelling, we have to dispels the three unwholesome thoughts of the mind, which are the Miccha Sankappa, the thoughts of lust, the thoughts of harmfulness, the thoughts of violence, ill will, violence. And then by avoiding, we have to give up the defilement that has to be given up by avoiding. So we have to avoid some, like the fierce animal that can cause harm to one, the wild snake, the dog, the tiger, and so on. And we have to avoid, unsuitable seeds and unsuitable place we shouldn't go, and avoiding or getting mixed with the bad friends, and so on. Number 6, by enduring. Enduring here, we have to put up, which means we have to be patient with whatever we experience, both physically and mentally. The way we, making use of our daily lifestyle, we will have to experience a lot of unease, discomfort, but we have to endure so that we can bring about the cessation of canker, defilement, right? We have to endure the unwelcome criticism. We have to endure all kinds of life-threatening that can take place. And then the last method is by developing. So we have to develop the 7 factors of awakening so that, it will lead to the attainment of cessation of suffering, right? It leads to the end of suffering by practicing the 7 factors of enlightenment. Like we already learned, the factors of mindfulness, the investigation of Dharma, rapture, tranquility, concentration, and the last one is the upekkha, equanimity. By so doing, after so doing, the Buddha said that if a bhikkhu or mendicant having practiced these 7 types of the method, then one is said to have restrained all defilements, who has cut off craving, untied the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit has made an end of suffering. Okay, chẳng dừng phần năng ấy. So that's all for today. We don't have time for question or or any discussion. But if you do have question, I will allow 1 or 2 questions. If anybody has question, you can raise the question right now. Okay, let me stop the screen sharing. Anyone has question? Because I went so fast because it is one of the long sutta. That's why I have to rush, go as fast as possible so we can finish on time. And if you cannot catch up within the class, please just watch it over and over again with the record. So you will have more ideas, and because this is very necessary sutta discourse that you should remember and learn by heart the 7 methods. You can share this, this method to others who would like to seek a problem ending, a solution to find some ways to make themselves happy. And they use this, in America they use some of this, all of this method when we study psychology, when we study the the mental health counseling. They actually apply all this method in counseling psychology. So if you study the Buddha's teaching in depth, in very detail, you could easily apply it, in every field, the clinic, the mental health counseling. They also give such a method when people facing problem. They ask, so how can I do to get rid of this problem? I feel sad, I feel stressful, I feel lost, so it can be dealt with even the family lifestyle, the problem in society, in the country. We can use any of this method, right? Especially for individual purposes, we can apply any of this method or all of the methods to deal with all the daily problems, right? Okay, Melanie Lim, you have any question?
Yes, I can see this is like all related to the Noble Eightfold Path. A lot of them are related, but I still have a question about the number 1, the seeing, and
The seeing.
when you say that reflecting to your daily, reflecting back to what you do or what you see. Can you explain more about that, please?
Can you repeat again? It's hard to hear from you.
The reflecting. You say that on number 1, giving up by seeing, and I catch the word that you say that you have to reflect every day. So can you explain more about the reflecting, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The most important point about the method 1 is about wise attention, right? So in the teaching of this sutta, as you have read at the very beginning, the Buddha pointed out 2 ways, like a comparison. The first paragraph, it is referred to about the negative side, which means for the uneducated ordinary mind, ordinary person like us. Normally we don't know how to pick up our thinking, right? We pay attention to something that shouldn't pay attention to, but something that should pay attention to, we didn't pay attention to, and that's how the problem arises. That's how the attachment gives rise, right? But instead, for the educated noble person like Ariya Bukkula, with their wise attention, their wise reflection, they paid attention only to things that should pay attention to, and they don't pay attention to things that shouldn't pay attention to. And that's why it leads to the non-arising of defilement. Mình đây tha dạy Khmer đấy chứ nó tha nó không ca lẹ nó chỉ lẹ tại ca khơi nó cứ tẹt tôn tân đăng vô này sao mà nè xịt ca ra mình đây tha bà dân miền Prạch nhá dân che rơ hả vậy ná để cua chập rắm mà vậy ná để cua bắt đau để vậy ná để mình cua bắt đau tại sầm rap này tì mùi nắng bằng sầm đài nhầm pi บรรทุชนได้มันมีการศึกษาละอ๋อนะ uneducated ordinary person นั้นคือแต่โจจัดจับโยเรื่องนะได้มันกลัวโยจับโยนั่นคือโจจัดจับโยมาตัวโดยยังใหญ่เรื่องสังคมได้ให้หัวคะแนนหรือก็เรื่องราวลุยพลันเจปติอะสรุปไอ้มันละอ๋อในสังคม Facebook ไอ้นั้นเรื่องมันมีนไปยาวจะยังโจจัดโยจัดตกดะจังให้บรรยากาศกันเลยการอักษรแต่สำหรับอะไรอย่างบุคคล the educated noble person คือเราอัดควาเรื่องนั่งใช้ในเราอัดจับอารมณ์ในคือเราโฟกัสแต่ละเรื่องนะได้นอมเอากุศลจำราญมันแม้นเรื่องได้นอมเอาอกุศลจำราญในจังในขนมนี้คือ wise attention โยนิสาวมนสิการะ is very important you should pay attention to things that give rise to wholesome to things that gives rise to non-attachment, right? So this is how the educated noble person always pays attention to. This is how we use wise attention, proper attention, yoniso manasikara. And again, the Buddha added that those who sees the good one, like Sappōrisa, ឃើញនៅបុគ្គលជាសប្បុរសឃើញនៅព្រះអរហន្តព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធឬសង្ឃសាវកក៏ដោយនឹងគឺជាការឃើញដ៏ល្អហើយអាចចាត់ទុកជាទស្សនានុត្តរិយៈមានន័យថាជាហេតុនាំឲ្យយើងបានឃើញធម៌កាលណាយើងឃើញពុទ្ធឃើញប្រសង្ឃយើងមានអារម្មណ៍យើងយកអារម្មណ៍ហ្នឹងក្នុងការបដិបត្តិដើម្បីឆ្ពោះទៅរកការសម្រេចនៅគុណធម៌ជាន់ខ្ពស់ជាដើមអញ្ចឹងការឃើញហ្នឹងទៅជាការឃើញដ៏ត្រឹមត្រូវការឃើញដែលនាំមកនៅប្រយោជន៍ជាការឃើញនាំមកនឹងការអស់ទៅនៃអាសវៈធម៌ហ្នឹងលោកសំដែងអញ្ចឹងហើយការឃើញនេះមួយទៀតលោកនិយាយទៅដល់កម្រិតសោតាបតិមៈមានន័យថានៅពេលដែលបុគ្គលឃើញនៅធម៌របស់សប្បុរសដូចជាអរិយសច្ចៈ4ដែលលោកលើកមកណាការឃើញពីwe see the dukkha the arising of dukkha the cessation of dukkha and the way leading to the cessation of dukkha អញ្ចឹងវាអាចកាត់ផ្ដាច់នៅការជាប់ជំពាក់ហើយនឹងសក្កាយទិដ្ឋិមួយចំនួនដែលតកតងទៅនឹងខ្លួនតកតងនឹង self like the 16 unanswered questions right when we see according to the four noble truths we understand things the way they really are ultimately not in the conventional truths so we know the ultimate realities and then it will lead to cessation of some kinds of wrong view about self you know ទិដ្ឋិលះបង់នៅសក្កាយទិដ្ឋិអាចលះបង់នៅសីលពតបរាមាសៈអាចលះបង់នៅវិជ្ជកិច្ឆាសេចក្តីសង្ស័យក្នុងគុណរបស់បរតនត្រ័យជាដើមហ្នឹងអាហ្នឹងគឺថាការលះបង់នៅកិលេសធម៌អាសវៈធម៌តាមរយៈការឃើញគឺការឃើញហ្នឹងរហូតដល់សោតាបតិមៈអស់ណាគ្រាន់តែតាមរយៈវិធីសាស្ត្រទី1ហ្នឹងគឺជួយយើងបានច្រើនមែនតើ so you got the idea ញោម
Yes yeah first I was thinking that the reflecting is like every day we do something and then we reflect it ourselves do we do this right or do we do this wrong you know how do we change it to get better or something like that that's what I'm thinking about the reflecting but thank you for the explanation
yeah it's more deep than that that's why I suggest all of you to read it over and over again with the sutta and I will drop the summary PowerPoint slide so you can have more idea and you know share it with others when you know the way share it with your friends it's very important sutta that's why I'd like to share with all of you okay any more questions or else we can end the class right now because of the time is over so I would like to collect all the merit that we have done through giving Dhamma, the knowledge, the sharing of knowledge and Dhamma to all beings. May all be well, happy, and be liberated from suffering. Tukha patta jana tukha payapatta jana payaya soka patta jani soka hontu sappe Pipaneno Anumotani. So see you next week. We have another teacher coming up. Have a good day and have a good night.
Thank you so much for the important